Hey everybody, and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore, and I am one of your hosts. Joined next to me, again, as always, is Dr. Scott Melson. Wow, that fade was really fast.
What's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. Happy Friday.
Happy freaking Friday.
It's been a long week.
I've been cantankerous this week.
You have been. I won't hold it against you. So in today's episode, we're going to do our response, our feedback on our annual Predict-o-Rama. That I didn't get the echo the first time when we did this back in January, but now I know how to work the soundboard.
You've been playing with that for like the last half an hour, and I feel like in the last few minutes you've learned some new tricks.
I'm a wise man. So anyway, we're gonna give feedback, or not feedback, but results of our Predict-o-Rama. We have two winners that tied this time. Two winners, and and I notified them via email. I believe one of them will be joining us on the phone, hopefully during this episode. Excuse me, I certainly have some bubbles in my throat. And then, so we'll do a news roundup. We'll do some Predict-o-Rama results. And then we'll go from there. Sound good?
Let's do it.
All right, Scott, let's get into the news. What do we have going on this week?
So, first up, we got a piece from the Tulsa World, and I'm gonna rag on the Tulsa World here for a minute, and I hope they don't take it too much offense to it, because they do a great job, and we cite them here all the time on the pod, and I have encouraged people to subscribe to them if they don't already, right?
Scott, are all of our stories from the Tulsa World this week?
Well, that could have happened.
Oh, but you chose not to.
I chose not to. Yes, we selected some other. We selected our stories from a multitude of sources this week. But as I was going through our Slack chat and looking at everything you and I had tagged this week, it was like, man, Tulsa World. They're
on their game.
So our first piece is looking at legislators and who missed the most votes during this legislative session. So if you go to the piece, they've got the pictures of several legislators here, and they seem very accusatory. Like if you weren't in session and you weren't making a vote every time there was a bill on the floor, well, by golly, that just means that you are not doing your job. Is
that the case though?
Well, so that's the question. Is like my kind of title for this was like, does this really matter? And I would say, spoiler alert, the answer is no. Right? Like gauging the number of votes for which a member is present. I don't know if it's the worst way to measure their level of engagement, influence, and activity in the legislature, but I think it might be close.
Not a great way. Well, and that's, I think, we've had this conversation, I think, on the show before, certainly off the show, that even measuring people's votes and how they vote is sometimes misleading, right?
Right.
Because like last year, we had the Step Up and the Step Up Plus and the AAA Dumaflachi Step Up Whiz Bang, all those packages. Like, some people voted against them because of the package, not because they were opposed to like a teacher pay raise, right? Like that was the big deal, and everyone's like, they voted against the teacher pay raise. Like, no, they voted against that specific plan. And so I think that is, if you are just looking on just a straight basis of votes, it can be misleading.
Well, so I'm going to read you some names, and you tell me how engaged you think each one of these people was in the legislature this year.
Okay.
First up, Senator Greg Treat.
Well, he's the pro tem, so he's pretty engaged.
Yeah. So he's
also, but leadership is often, like the pro tem and the speaker are often some of the folks who miss the most votes because they're doing other stuff.
So interestingly, that's true for pro tem. It's not true for speaker, because speaker can vote from his office.
Oh, that's right. Can Treat not vote from his office?
The pro tem of the Senate cannot vote from their office. So
I'd be so. That's a little.
Yeah, right. It's a little jank.
And then the floor leader has like a secret phone in their desk on the floor.
Yeah,
in the House at least. Right?
Yeah. So Senator Treat. How about this? Senator Roger Thompson.
He was the chair of the Appropriations and Budget Committee.
Yeah, so probably working pretty hard, don't you think?
Yep.
How about Representative Kevin Wallace?
He was the A&B chair in the House.
Yeah, so again, probably working pretty hard, right?
Reasonable.
How about Representative Jason Dunnington?
Also, I mean, and certainly an engaged legislator. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Representative Dunnington had 6 bills passed off the floor and 5 signed by the governor. In the House, they're allowed to run 8 bills, so
That may give him the highest win ratio of any legislator, I think.
it's up there. And one of those was criminal justice reform, retroactivity of state question 780. So House Bill 1296. So that certainly was one that I know that Representative Dunnington was working hard to get that across the finish line in the last few weeks of the legislature. So there's a few other people. There's like 8 names on this list. But all this to say, like, the point of talking about this piece is for me not to call out any of these individuals, but to say this is like a waste of time.
All right. Well,
so we're not going to talk about it
move on to the next article,
right? So next up, a study was released this week from the Commonwealth Fund. Andy, are you familiar with the Commonwealth Fund?
No.
So they're a nonprofit. They look at healthcare statistics, data, health system information, and this is the 2019 scorecard on state health system performance.
Can I ask a question real quick that is off topic?
Yes.
Some states are referred to as commonwealths, like the Commonwealth of Virginia, right?
Yes, they're not states; they're commonwealths.
What is the difference?
Massachusetts is the Commonwealth, I believe.
Really? So what's the difference?
I don't know. That's what they're called.
This is, I mean, last week we talked about counties, right?
Yeah.
And not all states have counties. Some have parishes, and then whatever Alaska has.
Like districts or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why you'd be a Commonwealth, not a state. But I know Virginia is a Commonwealth, and I'm like pretty sure Massachusetts is a Commonwealth.
Interesting. We'll research this further. Anyway, back to the Commonwealth Fund.
Yeah, so if you were going to guess where Oklahoma ranks in the 2019 Commonwealth Scorecard on state health system performance, where would you suggest that we lie?
I'm going to guess not great, Scott. just going on a limb here.
Well, we're next to last.
Mississippi last.
Well, so we're next to last, but we're 50 out of 51 because the District of Columbia, also not a state. So we are the next to worst health system in the country, which is good.
No, it's not.
David Radley, who is one of the authors of the report, this is a quote, said Oklahoma and Mississippi stand out for poor performance, even among poor performing states. So we're not just bad. We're like bad even compared to others who are bad.
We are the worst, or the best at being the worst.
Yes. We have a significant number of deaths from drug and alcohol abuse, more from alcohol than drug abuse. More from drug abuse than alcohol. The criteria that the study looked at are access and affordability, prevention and treatment, avoidable use of hospitals and the costs associated with that, healthy lives, and a disparity. Our best score was prevention and treatment, which we were ranked 42nd, and then we were worst for access and affordability at 49th. So we are 50th for uninsured adults and 49th for elderly patients that are receiving high-risk drugs, preventable deaths, colorectal deaths, and certain hospital admissions. So, so it's not great.
Okay.
It's not great. The full report is really interesting. It's quite long. We'll post it on the blog, and you can check it out. But we're going to talk more about healthcare here in Oklahoma in just a few minutes.
Okay. Well, so the next one is a closer look at Oklahoma's recent brain drain.
Yeah. So this is a piece from the Oklahoma Economist published in the Kansas City Fed. This is looking at where are college graduates going from Oklahoma. So Oklahoma has seen net migration out of the state. So net migration has been negative in 2016, 2017, 2018. And a big chunk of the people that are leaving Oklahoma are people that are college graduates, specifically those that hold bachelor's degrees, which is new. It's been the case for a long time that people with postgraduate degrees tend to leave the state. But it's a relatively recent development that people with bachelor's degrees are a net negative from the state as well. They're going to Texas predominantly, like mostly Texas, mostly the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but also to Kansas, Washington, and North Carolina, which I find interesting. Why do we have so many people going to North Carolina? But the reason this matters is because people with college degrees tend to have higher paying jobs. They tend to be in jobs that are a bit more skilled. They tend to spend more. They tend to save more, both, which is good for the economy and the overall progression of the state. So understanding why this is happening is actually really important.
I'm curious to see how these kind of trends change over time, particularly with all the discussion about, like student loan debt, right? So there's a lot of folks with college degrees, but I think we as a nation need to have a deep, hard conversation about what kind of professions need college degrees. And if I think that the education is super important, and I think I would love for everyone to have the opportunity for a college education, right? But I don't think that it's right to shoulder everyone with mountains of debt, because as we've discussed, a degree in social work pays the same or costs the same as a degree in finance, but the jobs you get do not pay the same afterwards.
So did you see big on the Twitter this week? I think this was out of Minnesota. University of Minnesota, maybe the University of Wisconsin, one of those Great Lakey northerny states, has this program where they're letting boomers, like baby boomers that are retired, they can come in and take classes
for like $10
for like $30. I mean, it's really, really cheap. It's like $30 to $50 a class. They're allowed to take these classes so they can learn about these things that they've always wanted to know about, but never had the time to go back to school. And there's been all of these people tweeting back and saying, so if this is really all it costs, can I not pay $50,000 to get my degree? Can I also pay the $50 because now I'm trying to embark upon my career without being saddled with a mountain of debt?
Right. Can we just make this retroactive and reduce the cost only?
But no, I agree. I mean, I think in Oklahoma, we actually do, Oklahoma, especially the last couple of years, talking about the legislature, we've been ragging on our education system a lot, but we have one of the best career tech systems in the country, actually. And I think probably it could be utilized more than it is, There's a huge need for skilled professions that don't necessarily require a college education. Now, I'm with you. Like, I think more education is better. I think if you're a carpenter, a liberal arts education benefits you, right? Like, right. I think if you're a doctor, a liberal arts education benefits you. I think that if you are, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's ever a scenario in which education is like bad. But in terms of what you need for your like vocation, right, I think we overuse college a lot, and there's a huge need, like for people to go into the building trades. So this is carpentry, electric, becoming an electrician, plumbing. These are understaffed industries, and we need young people to understand that you can go into those careers. You can learn the skill and get your license within 2 to 3 years at a career tech, and come out at 21 making really good money. Man, if I'd had a job making $60,000 a year at 21, like, yeah, I would have thought, like, you kidding me? Like, life is freaking great.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can make well over that in some of these skilled trades. Yeah. So that's the report from the Oklahoma Economist. We've got a piece up next from the Journal Record. Andy, I'm going to let you take the lead here because you know way more about this than I do.
Well, and like many stories, this one has been in multiple news outlets. I think I spoke with the Oklahoman yesterday and today, and then with Channel 4 here in Oklahoma City, KFOR, today as well, about this new criminal justice reform task force that the governor's appointed. And the members of the task force are a veritable who's who in Oklahoma government and nonprofits, right? So it's like Steve Buck from the Oklahoma Bureau of Juvenile Affairs, and it's Scott is messing with his microphone, and he just discovered that I have secured the cable to the boom arm it's also tied underneath with Velcro straps. It's designed to not be removed. Sorry. I didn't know you wanted to recline while we recorded.
I always want to recline.
Well,
it's my MO.
What listeners can't see is that I reorganized our studio today, and it's more like a living room setup.
It's delightful.
So this is our first time. We can adjust. I can set it so you can recline next time.
All right, continue. So we've got Steve Buck.
Steve Buck, Terry White from DMH.
Yep.
Justin Wood from DHS.
Justin Brown.
Sorry. Who's Justin Wood? Maybe someone else I
don't
know.
know.
Justin Brown from DHS. And
So-
the interim from DOC, like I said, and then some nonprofit leaders as well from Remerge and a few other organizations. So, and then Representative John Eccles is on there. Someone, one of the state senators, someone from the governor's office. It really is a well-rounded, I think, task force. And the purpose is to look at everything that intersects criminal justice and figure out what needs to be fixed, right? Which, that's good. The reason that it has come up into the news is that the chair, Chip Keating, who I believe is Governor Keating's son.
Correct.
And he's with the Department of Public Safety. He, in an interview yesterday when they announced it, said, someone asked if it would be open to the public, because he said stakeholder involvement and engagement is pivotal. And someone said, oh, will these be open to the public? And he said, no. And everyone's like,
I don't think that's legal.
well, that is the question, Scott. I, as executive director of Freedom of Information Oklahoma, who cares about this kind of thing, based on my reading, I've talked to a few folks today, I don't know that it's legal either. The problem is, if it's illegal, someone's got to challenge it, right? So I don't have the funds myself to sue the state government to force them to be open. However, here's the...
I bet somebody does.
Well, please stand up. If you do, if you're listening and you have money and you want to sue the government.
To be clear, I don't.
That's, but I think it'll be a hot button issue. However, there are violations of the Open Meeting Act and Open Records Act all the time at all levels of government, and it drives me insane because it's the law, but it's like you have to get a DA or someone to enforce it, or you have to sue them yourself.
What did you think of Mr. Keating's, Chairman Keating, whatever his title is? What did you think of his reasoning for why the plan was not to have this group subject to open meetings?
Well, so he just said that so far he's not given a legal reasoning. He just said that people would be more open to have like open conversation if their conversations were not public.
What is your thought about that?
I think, no kidding, I think everyone's conversations are probably more forthcoming if the public is not privy. However, that's not how government works. Like, we have the Open Meeting Act for a reason, and it's because the people have a right to know what goes into the policies and procedures and how the government works. And so, also, that's not a legal argument. My hunch would be, if they were to make a legal argument, which they've not done yet, the argument would be that there's a provision in the Open Meeting Act that says public bodies that don't make any decisions are not subject to it. However, there are plenty of examples. In fact, there was a lawsuit at Oklahoma State University several years ago when they were choosing a new president, Burns Hargis, who's now the president. In that process, there was a kind of a committee that said, oh, we're not making decisions, we're just giving recommendations for who the committee should interview, right? So like 7 applicants, we're going to pass on 4 of these. They said, we're not making decisions. However, the decision to pass on some and not pass on others is a decision, right? So that is a decision-making body. Whether or not that decision has any like perpetual implications is a different story. It doesn't matter.
Do you know what allows boards, committees, and commissions to enter into executive session?
Yeah. You have to say you're going into executive session. You have to state the reason for it, and you can only discuss that issue in the executive committee. There are some other provisions, but that's the gist of it.
Interesting. I mean, I am of two minds about this, as you know, right? Like, on the one hand, I agree that, like, as a general principle, more transparency is better, right? Like, the more transparency we can have, the better. The more insight we have into the decisions that our government makes, the better, right? But also, as you know, I think it's really hard to, right? Like, if a decision is meant to be like, if we're gonna try and decide something with everyone involved, that is what elections are for, right? And if we're gonna make decisions that not everybody is involved in, then I think at some point there can be times where deliberations are kept private, right? I mean, like, this is like the best example of this is executive privilege at the presidential level, right? Like, the reason executive privilege exists is so that advisors, staffers can speak their mind to the president, and the president can have all of the information, entertain all of the options, and even, you can make counter arguments, you can play devil's advocate, and you can have conversations that may not happen if they were being had in the public sphere, right?
I think this isn't nuclear war, though, and I think there are many examples where that is true and appropriate, right? Like, same with open records. The legislature is not currently subject to the Open Records Act. They exempted themselves. And when you talk to them, many of them, they will say, well, I don't think that my constituents' information in their email should be out there. I'm like, well, no, I don't think so either. There are typically exceptions for that kind of thing. Just like I've got a book over there I'll give you about Open Media and Open Records Act that has a list of court cases and decisions and exemptions for stuff like that. However, this committee is about like public safety,
right?
Public safety and criminal justice reform. Something we've talked about a lot, and involves members that are not elected officials, and just involves citizens. And they've said they're not making any decisions. They're just going to talk about it and maybe make some recommendations, which is a decision. But and so the Open Meeting Act doesn't require that you have a public comment time. That would be lovely. It just requires that you post an agenda and you say when you're going to meet, and that people can attend and sit there and listen, which is fine. Secondly, secondly, in addition to the Open Meeting Act is the Open Records Act, for which all of these public officials who are there, with the exception of the 2 state legislators, everyone else, the elected official, is already subject to the Open Records Act. And so everything this task force creates, they have to do minutes, they have to keep minutes. That's pursuant to open meetings, but open records that we as the public should have access to all the paperwork, all the reports, any emails, anything concerning these meetings anyway. And so my hunch, this is just a hunch, is that I suspect this might be one of those things where someone who has been in the private sector for their entire career now gets a job in government, and the private sector does not have open meeting or open records, right? You can have private meetings all day long, nobody cares. But that's just not the way it is in government, for good reason, because we don't want our government hiding stuff from us.
Yeah, no, and I think let me be clear. I'm not like anti-open meetings or open records, right? Like, I fully support both of those things. I just think that, I don't know. I think there are some times when it is more important than others.
I agree. I'm not. And this is one of those things where it's like not the point of it, but it's like the principle of it. That's what it is. For one, Governor Stitt ran on a platform of increased government transparency.
Absolutely.
To create a task force full of all the agency heads and some other individuals from the community, and then to say, "Yeah, you guys can't come." I'm like, well, that's not the way it works, man.
Right. Well, and I suspect we're going to find that actually is not legal, and it's going to have to be subject to open records and open meetings anyway.
Right. I agree. It feels dumb to make a big issue of this, but like, if you don't make a big issue about the little things that are so easy, then that's why it's so much harder, right? Like, most of the calls that I get for FOI are individuals who are trying to get their own like police arrest record. They're like, I got arrested 2 weeks ago for something and I need it for some reason, and they said they don't have to give it to me. And I'm like, okay. And like, it's just questions like that, or like city council stuff. I mean, people are always trying to skirt the law.
And I don't think this is dumb. I just am kind of like, is there? I'm trying to come up with a really strong feeling either way, right? Like if they do meet and it's not open to the public, and we see their recommendation. I mean, I guess that's the issue, right? Like if they meet and it's not open to the public, and we see their recommendations, and the recommendation is something that's like crazy, then you want to say like, well, how the hell did we wind up here?
Right.
You know what I mean? But maybe we see their recommendations and there's one recommendation that's crazy, and then there's another recommendation that's really, really good. And in order to get both of those, like you had to put them both. You see what I'm saying? Like
Right.
a deal had to be made, like a compromise had to be struck. And I just think that sometimes those can be hard to do with the 4 million people of Oklahoma watching.
I agree. All right. And we've got one more news article here. What is it?
Yeah, so this is a piece from KGOU,
yeah.
and this is the title. We're going to kind of hit a couple of different things with this. This is a boon for the uninsured or a path to financial crisis. So this is from earlier this week from the folks down in Norman, and what the article is really looking at is a proposal, a plan to allow insurance companies in Oklahoma to sell these much less expensive, much stripped down health plans in Oklahoma that have been disallowed for several years now because of the Affordable Care Act. These are short-term, limited duration insurance plans. The proposal is that people will be able to buy these for up to 36 months rather than 6 months, which is the current time limit. Usually these are what you would consider like gap coverage, right? Like this is insurance that you would buy to like, so you have something like in between a job, right? If you have a minute where you're not going to have health coverage. These are plans that are much, much different. They don't often don't have prescription benefits. They don't have maternity coverage. They're
not real insurance.
They don't cover like cancer if you should be diagnosed with cancer. They are very, very cheap because they don't really cover anything, right? The reason that people, in my opinion, the reason that people are pushing this is because it'll do two things. It will quote unquote decrease the cost of health coverage, but it will decrease the cost of health coverage because it will allow you to buy health coverage that doesn't do anything, and it will also reduce the number of uninsured. So it makes us look better. It makes us look like we have a much lower uninsured rate than we do, but our functional uninsured rate would be the same, and it makes it look like the cost of health insurance is coming down when really it's not. It just means that we're selling health insurance that doesn't cover anything. There are not many people. There are not many people across the country who actually have these plans. There's like about 122,000 people across the country that have plans like this. But states like Oklahoma, and I'll give you a guess which other states, you can probably name most of them. We are making a move to try and expand people's ability to buy these plans. The reason that we're kind of get into some other issues here is because the reason this is even an issue is because Oklahoma, as we just talked about, leads the nation, or is 49th in the nation in terms of uninsured citizens, right? We have a ton of people who don't have health care. And there's a lot on the horizon that's trying to address that. So another piece of news this week was Oklahomans Decide Healthcare. They came out, they announced this is the group that is going to be running a ballot initiative for State Question 802, which would expand Medicaid in the state of Oklahoma. Now, essentially, as soon as that was filed, there was a challenge filed against it. The challenge will be heard in the state Supreme Court on Tuesday. The challenge was filed. The plaintiffs are OCPA, the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs, a think tank in air quotes here, the OCPA. They are filing on with co-plaintiffs being a nurse as well as a radiologist who works up in Edmond. Several organizations, professional organizations, have filed briefs on behalf of the defendants, arguing that this would be good for Oklahoma. The state attorney general has written an opinion. Their opinion says, we think that there's a little bit of problem with the language here. Like, we don't see a problem with, like, constitutionally expending Medicaid, but there's some language that needs to be cleaned up in their proposal. And if they clean up their proposal, we think it should be fine to go forward. So we have talked about this ad nauseum here on the show, and we're going to talk about it some more later this summer. But one thing that was interesting today is Pat McFerrin, who is a local pollster, Republican pollster, Mr. McFerrin. He came out with a poll that he did. It's his own poll, where he looked at this question, and I think that the results are interesting. So when you look at Pat's poll, and I'm pulling it up right now, forgive me for taking a minute here. And I don't have the results of the entire poll, I don't think, but I've got here these first few questions. So first question that he asks is, as you know, a group recently launched an initiative petition drive to expand Oklahoma's Medicaid program. He kind of talks about what the program would be and says, would you support voting yes or voting, like, would you vote yes or no if you were asking today? 28% said definitely yes. 19% said probably yes. So that's what, 47%, right? 47% of Oklahomans said that, yeah, they would vote for it. 29% of Oklahomans said the best reason to do that would be that there are working Oklahoma families who don't have access to health care. And 22% said that our rural hospitals are struggling, and even closing and expanding Medicaid would help these hospitals stay open. Okay. Now, he then went and asked a question about which of the following are reasons to vote no on Medicaid expansion. And the most popular answer there was that there's no guarantee the federal government will continue to fund 90% of the program because we, the taxpayers, cannot afford it. We can't trust the federal government to keep their promise, and then we will have to choose between either kicking people off Medicaid, raising taxes, or crippling other parts of the state budget. Yeah, that was 28%. And then a further 22% said this is just another step in implementing Obamacare in Oklahoma and a move towards single-payer health insurance. Sure. So the thing is, what's interesting to me about that is that's 50% of the people, right, that are, like, said that they would be, what's the best way to put it? Of the 5 possible answers for, like, why you would not support Medicaid expansion, half of them are things that have, like, no basis in fact. Like, right? Like, so that's interesting to me because there's, like, when you talk about this idea that, like, the feds are not going to always support this, there's, like, laws in place saying that they have to, right? Like, the idea that the feds are going to say, no, we're not going to continue the 9-to-1, match guarantee. Like, that's never happened in the history of the program. Like, they've literally never done that. But 28% of Oklahomans think that's a good reason not to support this. Right. And then when you say that this is a first step on the road to single payer, I would actually argue that expanding Medicaid, far from being a first step on the road to single payer, is if you want to put off single payer, you should expand Medicaid. That's like, right. If you want to put off the march toward a single payer healthcare system, then expanding Medicaid is one of the things that you should be doing. Right. But anyway, so all that to say, when he asked a further question that says, it has been suggested that the state legislature and governor develop a Medicaid expansion plan that, while it expands Medicaid, has some other requirements, such as requiring minimal premium payments by the newly covered, requiring the able-bodied to work, ending the program if the federal government discontinues paying the 90% of the cost, and allowing private insurance companies to provide this coverage. Knowing this, which of the following would you prefer to see? And 48% said have the governor and state legislature create an Oklahoma plan that expands Medicaid with additional requirements. Right. So I think that Pat's contention here would be, if you want to expand Medicaid in Oklahoma, then a majority of the people would, or a plurality of the people would prefer an Oklahoma specific plan rather than generic Medicaid expansion.
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think that's his contention. And my contention would be, yes, that is clearly what this data says, but this data also shows that people are answering these questions who have an incomplete set of facts. Yeah. And I wonder how this information changes as Oklahoma decides rolls out their campaign over the next 6 months.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens.
So
let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to call Representative Zack Taylor.
Hello?
Hey, Representative Taylor.
Yes.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear good.
Super, great. Well, hey, thanks for joining us. I'm Andy Moore. I'm joined here with Scott Melson.
hey, Rep, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us.
So
Thank you guys.
I'm pleased to tell you in person, I know I already emailed you, but you were one of our winners this year of our annual Predict-o-Rama for the Oklahoma legislature. And this is
Yeah.
not only the first time that we had an elected official play, but you actually won.
Right?
Some might say that as a sitting representative that you had an advantage, but we made an executive decision that you should be eligible to win the contest just like anybody else.
Okay, well, good deal.
Also, no one can predict what happens each spring at the
That's
Oklahoma
true.
legislature. So I'm curious, do you remember back in January, I think is when we kind of put it out there, where you found out about it? Did you see it on Facebook or Twitter, or I don't know if you listened to our podcast even?
I saw it on Facebook.
Nice. Okay. So I will say our other winner is Amanda Ewing, who works for OEA. So we actually had a lobbyist and a legislator win this year, which isn't a good look for us. But we, again, who could know? And so Representative Taylor, you and Amanda were a little bit different. We had 20 items altogether, and only 4 of those 20 actually passed all the way and were signed into law. The teacher pay raise, a state employee pay raise, permitless carry, and then the last one was House Bill 1269, which made State Question 780 retroactive. And so
Right.
you correctly predicted all of those. However, you and Amanda only got 3 of them. I think all the ones that Amanda guessed, she got. But you guessed all 4 correctly, and then you had one that was incorrect. You had
Right.
also guessed that we might pass a ban on teacher walkouts.
Right.
So that
I
was
was hearing that kind of some skirmish and uprising about some of that, so I kind of predicted that there might be a push for that. But it
Sure.
turns out that was kind of put on the back burner, which is probably a good thing. No reason to poke people in the eye when they're just trying to make a difference. So
right.
I'm glad we kind of moved away from that. But
Well, yeah, it was. I think back in January, it was anyone's guess about what was going to happen. There was still a lot of emotion from last year carrying over, and I think a lot of people had some big ideas. So,
right.
well, congratulations on winning. I will say I haven't yet said it on the show yet, but you and Amanda both tied. So the most points you could have was +4, and then you could have a -20 if you missed all of them, right? And so you guys both were +3, which is great. And then the worst score was a -7, so not terrible, honestly. Like people,
Oh, yeah. So it was pretty close then.
yeah. It was funny reading through, seeing the list of everyone. We had 40-something people, 47 people who played this year.
That's really solid. I
That's
didn't
good.
realize we had that many.
Mm-hmm. And so it is funny. We'll have to do Peter Evans, who won last year, had a -4 this year. He didn't do so hot. So sorry, Peter. No tote bag for you. So Representative Taylor, you are from House District 28, which is
Right.
out in Potawatomi, Seminole County. Tell us a little bit about
Part
your
of my district is Seminole County.
Seminole County. Okay. Tell us a little bit about your district and how you came to be in the legislature.
Well, my district is all rural. I believe the largest town in my district is Seminole, and it comes in at about 7,500 people. I was elected in a special election in May of 2017, and what brought that about is our district's representative, which was Tom Newell at the time, resigned to take a job in the private sector. So that created a special election. I won a four-way primary, and then I won the general in May of 17.
Yeah. So you came in after the teacher walkout last year. Well, no, 17. That's the year before last.
No,
Yeah.
no, I experienced the.
That's right. You were there for that.
Most all of the revenue votes. So I don't think things should get much worse than that. So it's looking up from there. It's been a great session. This first year of the 57th has been great as compared to the 56th. So I'm looking forward to the great things to come.
Yeah.
Representative, were you always interested in like running for office and public service, or kind of what was your what kind of got you thinking to run, and what did you do before that?
Well, it's not really something that I'd always thought I was going to do. I mean, my family has always been service-minded, but not necessarily as far as serving in the legislature. But I just looked around at the state that I've grown up in, the only state I've ever known. Now my wife and I have a little girl, and I said, it's time to step up and make a difference and try to make this state a better place to live and grow up. And instead of being the guy that sits around and complains and just talks about all the bad things in Oklahoma, I decided to be the guy that steps up and gets involved to really turn things around, or attempt to turn things around anyway. So
yeah,
here I am.
You're speaking to our heart. That's how we got started, and we appreciate that sentiment from anybody. What do you think, aside from these things that in our little game that passed, what do you think was the biggest accomplishment of the legislature this year?
Well, I know that there's some disagreement on both sides of the issue as far as saving money, but I think it's a great thing for our state to begin the process of being fiscally responsible and sticking more money back for when things turn back down, when the economy goes back down. I think for long-term stability of our state and long-term stability of our core services, we're going to have to plan for the future and plan for the economy being down again, because the nature of our economy, more so even than other states, is there's a lot of peaks and a lot of valleys because of the price of oil. Mm-hmm. So until we move farther away from being so dependent upon that, we're still going to continue to experience that. And the best way to deal with that, in my opinion, is to save more money. So I think it's great that we didn't spend everything that came in. We did make some more investments in education and state employee pay and corrections, and we hope to continue those investments again next year. So. Personally, I think that's the biggest thing we really did.
In terms of future investment, do you think that those healthcare and education, will those be the service areas that will continue to see investment in the second session of the 57th, or do you think there's other core services that are going to need to be looked at?
Oh, I think there will be. We'll continue to look at education. I think that the move, in my opinion, will be more towards classroom funding and per pupil spending. And we may continue to look at some of our state employees that don't make a competitive wage. I think that we will probably continue to look at that. And then we're going to have to take a look at healthcare with the state question that's going to be filed for the expansion of Medicaid. We're probably going to have to take a look at that ourselves as well at the legislature. So,
do you think you're going to get called back for a special session about Medicaid?
I don't really think so, and if we did, I estimate that it would just be a little bit early, like maybe go in January instead of February or something like that.
Sure.
I don't really see us going in like in the fall or anything like that.
Selfishly, I hope that you're right. We started this podcast in 2017, I guess, right, Andy? Was it 2017 or was it last year?
Yeah.
It all runs together because we started it right before all the special sessions happened with the budget crisis, and we had all these plans of everything we were going to talk about in the off season, but we never had an off season because you guys were in session for like 15 months. So if we never did that again, that'd be great.
Oh, it'd be great with me. I mean, I really haven't had a great interim break until
now. Yeah.
We had a lot going on.
What do you think? Talking about healthcare, what do you think the legislature needs to do with healthcare? What does that look like to you?
Well, I don't really know what that's going to look like. I mean, there's two sides to that coin. A lot of people think that we need to do full Medicaid expansion and take the federal dollars. But again, I look at things from the fiscal responsibility side, and I just want to make sure that we don't get ourselves into a mess. In other words, take a bunch of federal money because of the high matching rate now, and then the federal government decide, hey, we can't sustain this high matching rate, so we're going to take the matching rate from 9-to-1 down to, say, 4-to-1. Well, that creates a big liability for the state of Oklahoma. So I just want to tread carefully, do what's best for the people of Oklahoma. I think we have a lot of healthcare experts and some health-setting legislators that are experts in the field of healthcare working on the issue now. I think there'll probably be some interim studies take place on it. So I'm just here to listen and do what's best for the people of Oklahoma.
Sure. Anything that you think we should look forward to for next year?
Well, let's see. I think that there will continue to be a push for savings to continue the path of fiscal responsibility. And I think, I'm looking forward to Secretary Ostro, which has been named the Secretary of Digital Transformation. I'm looking forward to what he's got in store for many of our state agencies, because many of our IT stuff at our agencies is just so old and antiquated, and I think there could be a lot of efficiencies created there, and I think that would also deliver services of government to the people of Oklahoma much better and much more streamlined.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about that.
I echo that. Some of the things he said has got me excited. Everything requires time and money, so we'll see if we get there, but at least someone's thinking about it.
Yeah. I think it'll be great for the state. Some of the things that he's got on his mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, Representative Taylor, I appreciate you taking some time to join us on a Friday afternoon. I will get your prize pack in the mail to you shortly. Have a good summer.
Sure. Thank you, guys. Good to talk to you.
You too. Thanks, Rep.
All right, we're back. Thanks to Representative Zack Taylor from Seminole for joining us.
Yeah, that was great. It's the first time Rep's been on the show. Hopefully we can maybe get him come on in person. When they're
I offered, but it was short notice on this.
Yeah.
All right, well, Scott, let's dig a little deeper into our results of our Predict-o-Rama before we wrap up this episode. As we said, Representative Taylor and Amanda Ewing. Amanda could not be here today. She is great with child and has her very final, ultrasound today at the same time we're recording, so...
I mean, I guess if that takes priority.
She's also my neighbor, so I was like, oh, I think I can deliver this. She doesn't live very far away. Scott, your dad played. I just saw that.
Oh, yeah?
He was -3.
Oh, hey, not bad.
Yeah. Some other funny ones I will, people you might know. David Glover was a +2. Close. Gene Perry from OK Policy, a policy guru, +1. So pretty close.
Nice.
Again, +4 was the top score. Joe Dorman, former state rep and current director of OICA, he was a +2. If you guys listen to the Passing Notes, if you're educators, you should listen to the Passing Notes podcast with Stephanie Hinton. Stephanie's husband Frank got a +2. Stephanie did not do so hot. I think he beat her.
Andy, you and I wisely did not record our predictions.
We did not. Khaki Porch, who was on last week, 2 weeks ago,
Yes.
She was a -1. Yeah, so it was a good selection. I look forward to kind of giving these folks a bit of a ribbing on some of this. If you want to know, I also calculated which ones had the highest correctness or highest incorrectness, right? So again, the only ones that actually passed were the teacher pay raise, the state employee pay raise, House Bill 1269, which made 780 retroactive, and then permitless carry. Those are the 4 that passed. The ones that were the most missed were actually the teacher pay raise and the public employee pay raise. People did not think they would. More people thought
they wouldn't happen than
right.
would.
Yeah, 55% thought it would not pass.
Interesting.
And then the one that was the most correct, where everyone got it correct, it didn't pass, but it is. Oh shoot!
Oh, was this the conversion therapy bill where everybody said it had no chance?
No, the increase in the minimum wage to $10.50. This is a bill from Senator George Young.
Sure.
No one, literally 94% of our respondents did not think it would pass.
Sad, but unsurprising.
Yeah. And second for that one goes to Senate Bill 592, which would require a $50,000 bond for rallies at the state capitol. That was pretty funny. And then 1153, which would allow people in each county to decide if all county offices would be nonpartisan. Of course, they didn't go for that. So anyway, it was pretty interesting kind of reviewing the results. Thanks to everyone who played. Next year, Scott, we should really cast our ballots out there. I think I went back and listened to that episode. I was very sick that day. Had a sinus thing back in January. It was like I turned it on. I was like, oh, I sound terrible. And then like the first line was you and I saying that I sound terrible.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Crystal Yosef joined us for that episode as well. We need to get Crystal back on the show.
Yes.
All right. Scott,
That about wraps it up.
That wraps it up for today.
You know, we have hinted that we are going to have all these cool things to talk about over the summer, and then finally this week you and I sat down and hashed out the schedule.
We had a conference call.
and figured out exactly. So should we just kind of briefly let people know what they can expect?
Sure. I think
coming up between now, we've got a plan to take you all the way pretty much until session resumes again in February.
Well, yeah, almost that far.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to do an episode about the politics of pride. As it is June is Pride Month. We're going to have a couple of members from the LGBT community. I believe one Republican and one Democrat to come on and talk about the politics of pride and how they relate to it and what's similar and what's different there. And then, and then we got to make a new decision here where we're going to play the audio from our Civic Saturday event. However, that event has been postponed. One of the organizers had a family emergency, and so we've had to postpone that. So that will not be happening this Saturday. However, so the month of July, we're going to have a special series about criminal justice reform. And then roughly in the month of August, we're going to have a series on gerrymandering and redistricting. Something, Scott, you saw my book. I just got a new book about it. And in fact, I think, I can't say the name of the book on the air, I guess. It's Rat-Finked. is what it could be.
RATF**KED.
Yeah, we'll say Rat-Finked. David Daly is the author, and I believe we'll have him on the show at some point to talk about gerrymandering. And also this month, we should hear not the results, but the opinion of the Supreme Court of the United States on some gerrymandering cases.
By the end of June.
And then, so that'll be in July, or excuse me, in August. And then in September, we're going to have a healthcare series. Scott, you look surprised at that.
No, I had a thought. So we're going to have a healthcare series through September, and then October, November, we're going to try and get in really an absurd level of detail about how bills become laws in Oklahoma.
Yeah, we're just going to break it all down.
Kind of take a deep dive so that when we are when we get into session next February and the ledge is passing all this stuff, we will not have to review the rules every week to talk about what all these things mean and how they happen.
Well, and as I was making the outline for that series, it occurs to me that there's like the first cut of just like it passes both chambers and the governor signs it, like nice and easy,
right?
And that almost never happens, right? And then
open carry,
right? Yeah, and then and so we'll have like a 101, like a 201, and a 301 level course of like, here's how laws get made.
Yep.
Here's the simple way. Here's the a little bit more complicated, and then like here's the really grungy sausage making way.
We're gonna go from like your freshman in high school course in government to your graduate level course in civics.
Neither of which we've had.
Correct. Well, we both took the
We're
freshman
gonna
level,
write the
right?
curriculum on the air. So if you'd like to audit our course, please rate and review.
We hope that all of you will plan on staying with us and joining us for all the great content we've got coming up.
Good God, I didn't realize how detailed how a bill becomes the law thing is. That's a full page of outline.
Yes, sir.
We're really getting into it there.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, on that note, it brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks for hanging with us. Be sure to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts if you have an Apple device. Also on Spotify and other places. Tell your friends. Invite them to listen to the podcast. Have a listening party. Hell, you can come join us in studio now. We've got a nice little setup here. We could have a handful of guests come join us. We can bring in some extra chairs. If you're interested in joining us for a taping, please email us at podcast@letsfixthisok.org, and we'll make that happen. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're at Let's Fix This OK. Scott is at SC Melson. I am at Andy OKC. Let's Fix This is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. And man, we want you to be involved a little more than you are right now. So whatever it takes, we're going to get you there. Be sure to tell your friends. Don't forget to register to vote. Update your registration. Register to vote by mail. I got a ballot in the mail today for next month. I'm very excited. And with that, have a good week.